Hey everybody, this is Robot here from Vespa Motorsport and ScooterWest.com here in San Diego, California. Today I'm going to show you every function that you need to know about on a Vespa GT200, pretty much a Vespa GTS 300 from the years 2010 to 2014. All the LXs, so you're talking 2006 all the way to about 2014. And let's get right to it. So here we have a 2009 Vespa LX, and pretty much all the other models have the same indicators. If you have a liquid cooled model, pretty much the 300s and the Vespa GT200, you're also going to have another analog gauge right below where the fuel gauge is, indicates your temperature. This is an LX, so obviously it's not there, but pretty much the lights all do the same thing. So right when you turn the key on, you're going to see a couple indicators come on every time. So you have your low oil pressure light, and you have your indicator that lets you know your lights are on. Well, here in the United States, the headlights always came on right when you turn the key on. In Europe, back in the day, you could turn your lights off, so that would indicate your lights were off or your running lights were off. But pretty much you just count on that light always being on. So the oil light, it always will come on when the motor's not running, because the engine's not running and building oil pressure. The moment you start the scooter, it should extinguish. Just like that, and you turn the engine off, it's going to come back on. If that light ever comes on during operation of the scooter, that's bad news. It means your oil pressure is dropped, most likely from low oil. And typically, if you operate with low oil pressure, engine damage will occur in just a couple minutes. So if you ever see that light come on while the motor's running, I suggest just stopping and figure out what's going on. Check your oil level, of course, first. You never want to rely on that indicator on when it's time to add oil, because at that point, you probably have only a quarter of the full capacity of the oil by the time that light comes on. The next light right there is your high beam, low beam. And on the GTS 300, the headlight only comes on after you start the scooter. They have a relay that turns on the LX, and the GT200 comes on the moment you turn the key, so it indicates your high beam. The low fuel light comes on when you're on the last reserve capacity, which is around 2 liters, 2 quarts of half gallon of fuel. And considering LX gets maybe 70 miles per gallon, you probably got about 30, 35 miles of range. GTS is similar as well, 25, 35 miles of range when that light's on. Sometimes you can push a little further, but don't want to test your luck. So the turn signal on the LX model, that's not fuel injected. So fuel injected LXs started in 2011. These have a separate indicator for both the left and the right turn signal, just indicating that your turn signal's on. On the later models, they moved them all around. So you have one of these lights that's going to be a check engine light, and there's only a single indicator for both the left and right turn signal. And the check engine light is only found on the fuel injected models. It could be a GTS 300 or a Vespa LX 150 IE from 2011 and later. If that light comes on, it just means there's a fault with the fuel injection system. Generally, it's safe to ride the scooter until you get that checked out. Moving on to the speedometer, you have the classic analog speedometer with the backlighting on it. The outer scales in miles per hour and the inner scales kilometers per hour for the United States. You can count on these style speedometers at the higher speeds to be maybe 8, 9 miles per hour optimistic. So on a GTS 300, I have people tell me, oh, them doing nearly 90 miles an hour. No, you're just doing just under 80 is what you're probably doing. These scooters, obviously, an LX gets up to maybe 65, maybe 70 on a downhill. So it's pretty much your top speed. Moving on below the speedometer needle, you got the odometer, and it's a fully mechanical odometer. If your speedometer and odometer stop working, it's most likely going to be your speedometer cable, drive, or the speedometer gear that's in the hub. It's a completely mechanical system, so you can have the scooter off and be rolling, and the speedometer still works, completely mechanical. All the other indications are electrical on this instrument right here. So pretty much you turn the power off and the fuel gauge drops down to 0 and all your lights go out. Moving on to the clock, it's pretty much the same thing as the old school Casio wristwatch. It has a little coin battery that's buried inside the speedometer, and you got to dismantle this whole entire assembly to replace a clock battery. It doesn't cost much at all. This one fortunately works. Most of the time they come in and they don't work because you get maybe 2 years life out of the clock battery. I'll show you how to set the clock. So right now it looks like it's off. It is about 7:20, 26 right now. So I'm gonna go ahead, and you can also go to an odometer. I pushed the lower button a couple times until it advanced to the hours, and is indicated by PM and AM. Not really important if it's AM or PM for, that's only for your date. That's not, used all that frequently. They're not really needed. And we'll go ahead and set that to 23. There we go. And then push it again. Push it one more time, and it's now on a mode where it switches between the date and the time. You may like that. You could certainly set the date, but just advance through all of them again if you just want just the time. So once those colons are blinking between it, you're on just the time only. That's the most useful setting. So the last indicator, it says code right below a light that blinks occasionally, whatever, about once every second when the scooter's off. After a couple days, it will quit blinking. It's more or less kind of like a security light, indicating that the scooter's powered up and secure, I guess. But that's also a light that indicates faults with the immobilizer system. So the keys on these modern Vespas have a chip in them. And if the chip's correctly coded to the scooter, whether it's a carbureted older Vespa LX or the GTS 300, the 50 cc's, that does not apply. They do not have that code light, or it may be present, but it doesn't do anything because they do not have the immobilizer system. Pretty much all the 150 and larger Vespas always have the immobilizer system. So you turn the key on, the light blinks once and goes out, and that's normal operation. It's going to allow me to start the scooter. If you have a fault with the system, or you put the incorrect key that's not coded to the scooter, I'll show you what happens. So you turn the key on, it blinks once, 2 more blinks, indicates that the key was not the correct key for the scooter, or there's a fault. The light stays on. It's going to allow me to crank but not start. On the fuel injected models, they may disable the cranking altogether, but these carbureted ones, they'll crank and they won't start. And if it blinks 3 times before it comes solid, it means there's a fault with the antenna. You probably most likely need to replace the antenna that detects the chip in the key. Well, thanks for watching. I hope that answers all your questions, specifically to pretty much all the Vespa LX models, Vespa GTS 300 from 2010 to 2014, and the Vespa GT200 made from about 2006 to about 2009. See you on the next one. Robot here from Vespa Motorsport and ScooterWest.com. You're looking for parts and accessories for your Vespa, you're looking to repair your Vespa, you've come to the right place. Scooter West, just check us out on the web. We have everything you need to service and accessorize your Vespa.